"Be quiet." A poor gateman kissed his billionaire boss to save her life. What happened next shocked all. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the city seemed to hold its breath. When the billionaire boss was leaving her office late, the streets were almost empty, lit only by the dim glow of flickering streetlights, and the shadows stretched long and menacing across the pavement. The air carried an unusual chill, and every step she took echoed in the silence, making the night feel heavier with each passing moment. She felt a subtle unease, a prickling in the back of her mind, but she brushed it off as fatigue from the long day. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, two figures emerged from the darkness. Their movements were deliberate, their eyes cold and focused, and the glint of metal in their hands told her instantly that they were armed. Panic surged through her veins and her chest tightened as adrenaline and fear collided inside her. She froze, unable to comprehend the sudden threat, her mind racing for a way out. Just as the attackers took a step closer, a poor gateman, who had been quietly observing from a distance, noticed the danger and ran forward without a moment's hesitation. He was ordinary in appearance, nothing remarkable to the untrained eye, but there was a steel in his resolve that no wealth or status could match. Without a word, he grabbed her hand and leaned close, whispering urgently, "Be quiet." His voice was low but commanding, a lifeline in the storm of chaos that surrounded them. There was no time to explain, no chance to think. Instinct took over. Desperation fueled his next move as he acted instinctively, pressing a bold, calculated kiss to her cheek, a sudden act designed to distract, confuse, and buy precious seconds. The attackers flinched, caught off guard by the audacity and unexpectedness of the gesture, and in that brief hesitation the world seemed to slow. Every heartbeat echoed like thunder, every breath felt impossibly loud, and the tension in the air was almost tangible. The billionaire's mind struggled to process what was happening, shock mixing with disbelief, gratitude, and fear. Her eyes widened as she realized that her survival depended on the courage of this man, a person she had likely overlooked countless times before. He guided her, step by careful step, toward the shadowed alley nearby, keeping their movements silent and calculated, his body tense and ready for any sudden threat. With every cautious motion, he ensured she remained unseen, unheard, and untouched, even as the danger lurked close enough to feel like a shadow brushing against her skin. In that terrifying night, amid the fear and uncertainty, the bravery of one humble gateman became a lifeline, a testament to courage born not from wealth, influence, or power, but from the heart of a man willing to risk everything for another. By the time they reached relative safety, the shock of what had just occurred left them both trembling, hearts racing, and the city around them returning slowly to its quiet, indifferent rhythm. It was a moment that would forever be etched in memory, a story of fear, quick thinking, and the unexpected heroism that emerged in the most unlikely place, proving that sometimes true courage comes from those who have the least to give but the most to risk. The attackers froze for a moment, their eyes wide with confusion and surprise, clearly unprepared for the boldness of the poor gateman's sudden action. Their plan, calculated and precise, had been thrown into chaos by a man who seemed at first glance ordinary and insignificant, but whose courage eclipsed any expectation. The billionaire's heart pounded wildly, adrenaline surging through her veins, her mind struggling to process the audacity she was witnessing. How could someone so poor, so ordinary in appearance, act with such fearless determination? He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper, yet firm and commanding, saying, "Trust me. Follow my lead." There was no time to question him, no opportunity to weigh options. Every second was precious. Every movement could mean life or death. Carefully, he guided her through a narrow alley, the walls closing in around them, shadows stretching like long fingers that threatened to reach out and claim them. Each step he took was precise, measured and deliberate, a calculated dance of survival as he ensured they remained unseen by the men who had come to do them harm. His hand remained steady on hers, a silent reassurance while his eyes darted constantly, scanning every corner, every shadow, anticipating danger before it could strike. The sounds of the city, distant traffic, the soft rustling of leaves, the faint drip of water from a nearby gutter were amplified in the tense silence, each one a potential signal that they had been discovered. Yet he moved with unwavering determination, completely focused on her safety, his own fears buried deep beneath layers of instinctive bravery. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, every heartbeat magnified, each breath heavy with tension, but he refused to falter, refused to show even a hint of hesitation. The billionaire, though trembling and overwhelmed by the danger, felt a strange sense of trust growing within her, a recognition that her survival rested entirely on this man's courage and quick thinking. The alley twisted and turned, dark corners threatening to conceal threats at every angle, yet he guided her seamlessly, his knowledge of the city's hidden paths allowing them to navigate as if the night itself had opened for them. In that suspended moment, the world outside ceased to exist. The danger, the fear, the uncertainty, all of it compressed into the singular mission of getting her to safety. There was no thought of reward, no expectation of gratitude, only the singular, unyielding focus on protecting another human being, and in that, the purest form of bravery revealed itself. Each careful step forward was a silent declaration that heroism does not come from wealth, status, or power, but from a heart willing to act decisively, to face fear head-on, and to risk everything for the sake of another. And as they moved deeper into the shadows, narrowly escaping the men who had underestimated them both, the night itself seemed to acknowledge the extraordinary courage of a man who would sacrifice everything to save a life not his own. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of tension and calculated movement, they reached a small, hidden service entrance tucked away in the corner of the alley, almost invisible to anyone who didn't know it existed. The gateman's eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the area carefully before he stepped forward, ensuring that no threat lurked nearby, and then he pushed the heavy door open with a quiet but deliberate force. Inside, the dim light barely illuminated the narrow hallway, casting long shadows that seemed to move with the faint flicker of a distant bulb, and he ushered her through without hesitation, keeping one hand firmly on hers to guide her safely past every potential obstacle. Her body was trembling, not just from fear but from the adrenaline that still coursed through her veins, while her mind raced to comprehend everything that had just happened. The sudden attack, the boldness of the gateman, and the sheer audacity that had saved her life. Each step forward felt like a small victory, yet every sound, every creak of the old wooden floor beneath them, reminded them both that danger could still be near, that the attackers could be following, and that nothing was truly over until they were completely safe. He said nothing, speaking only through gestures, his nods and subtle movements conveying reassurance and calm in a moment when panic could have easily taken over. Outside, the shadows of the night had swallowed the men, leaving them to vanish into the darkness, stunned and unable to comprehend the quick, fearless action that had outsmarted them. There was a profound silence inside the narrow service corridor, a silence so intense it pressed against their ears, broken only by the loud, uneven beating of their hearts, echoing off the walls in a rhythm that mirrored both relief and lingering fear. The billionaire's chest heaved as she tried to catch her breath, her thoughts torn between gratitude and disbelief, while the gateman remained steadfast, alert, and unshaken, his mind still scanning the space for any sign of danger that might have been missed. Every detail mattered. The position of the door, the shadows in the corners, the faint sounds from the street beyond. All of it required vigilance, for even a moment of distraction could undo the fragile safety they had fought to achieve. As they paused, he gave her a final nod, a silent affirmation that the immediate threat had passed. Yet the weight of the experience hung heavily in the air, pressing on them both with the gravity of what had just been endured. In that quiet, almost sacred space, a bond had formed between them, an unspoken acknowledgement of trust, courage, and the extraordinary human instinct to protect one another against insurmountable odds. For a brief moment, the world outside ceased to exist, and the night belonged entirely to the two of them. The one who had risked everything and the one who had survived against all odds, their shared ordeal leaving an indelible mark on both their lives, a story of fear, bravery, and the unexpected heroism of someone no one had thought capable of saving a life. Later, as the events of that terrifying night began to settle into her memory, the billionaire replayed every second of the encounter with vivid clarity. Unable to shake the images and emotions that had collided within her, she thought about the attackers, their cold, threatening presence. And then she remembered the sudden, unthinkable bravery of the gateman, a man she had likely overlooked countless times before, whose ordinary life and quiet demeanor had hidden an extraordinary courage. The weight of what he had done pressed heavily on her chest, leaving her both stunned and grateful, her mind struggling to fully comprehend the risk he had taken for someone so wealthy and powerful, someone whose life seemed completely unattached from his own. Every detail came back, the way he had whispered to her, the calculated kiss that had distracted and confused the attackers, the unwavering hand that had guided her through dark alleyways, and the sharp, vigilant eyes that had scanned every shadow for danger. In that moment, gratitude intertwined with shock, forming a complex web of emotions that left her speechless, her usual composure replaced by awe and humility. She realized that this single act, born from desperation, instinct, and an unyielding sense of loyalty, had altered her perception of courage, bravery, and the human spirit, forcing her to see the world not just through the lens of power and wealth, but through the lens of selfless heroism that could emerge from the most unexpected places. News of the incident spread quickly, whispers turning into conversations, conversations turning into astonishment, as people everywhere tried to grasp the reality of what had occurred. It wasn't just the audacity of the attack that captured attention, but the remarkable heroism of a man no one had ever predicted would act so boldly. A man who had risked everything without hesitation to save another life. Stories circulated about the gateman's courage, about how an ordinary poor man had acted with extraordinary decisiveness, and how his name, once unknown, became synonymous with bravery and honor. The billionaire, reflecting on the ordeal, felt a profound shift within herself, an awakening to the fact that true courage did not reside in wealth, social standing, or authority, but in the willingness to act selflessly, decisively, and without expectation of reward when confronted with danger. She could not stop thinking about the quiet hero who had risked his life to ensure hers, whose single, desperate action had created ripples far beyond that dark night, leaving everyone who heard the story inspired, humbled, and in awe. The memory of his bravery would remain etched in her mind forever, a reminder of how courage could appear in the most unlikely of places, how a simple act, driven by instinct and heart, could alter the course of a life, and how a poor gateman's fearless choice had saved not just her life, but had also created a story of heroism that would continue to inspire and resonate with people for years to come.